video, we're going to complete the KutaSoftware Infinite PreAlgebra free worksheet, Dividing Integers. Now, before we jump into this worksheet, I want to do a quick review from my lesson video. If we have opposite signs divided, meaning one number is positive and one number is negative, the result, or that quotient, is going to be negative. If we have the same sign, a negative and a negative, or a positive divided by a positive, then that answer is going to be positive. And let me draw a quick chart that I find useful. Alright, so starting with the top one, a positive divided by a positive is a positive. A positive divided by a negative is a negative, so there you can see the opposite signs. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, and finally a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So when the signs are the same, we get a positive. When the signs are different, we get a negative. And other than that, we're just dividing the number. So let's dive into number one. 35 divided by negative 5, that's a positive divided by a negative, so our result is going to be negative. Now let's look at the numbers without that negative sign. So if we have 35 divided by a negative 5, 35 divided by 5 is 7, and remember our result is negative. So this is a negative 7. So negative 7 is our solution in number 1. And if you thought that I did 35 divided by 5 quickly in my head, that takes practice. Just work on simple division of positive numbers, and once you get that down, dividing with negative numbers is a breeze. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, if you need to, refer back to our chart. But we have a negative divided by a positive, different signs or opposite signs, so our result is going to be negative. And we all know that 8 divided by 4, we can think of that as how many times does 4 go into 8? And that's 2. But as opposed to a positive 2, we have a negative 2 because they're opposite signs. Meaning that the signs are different. Positive is the opposite of negative. And number 3, right away, we know that our answer should be, well, is it positive or negative? Negative, because a negative divided by a positive is a negative. And we have 24 divided by 4, so 4 goes into 24 6 times, so negative 6 is our solution in number 3. In number 4, we have negative 8 divided by negative 2. A negative divided by a negative results in a positive because we have the same sign. So negative divided by negative is a positive. 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that is indeed a positive 4 for number 4. In number 5, we have 8 divided by 4. Positive divided by a positive, our result is also going to be positive. So we know that the quotient is positive, but let's do the math. 8 divided by 4, 4 goes into 8 2 times. So 2 is our solution in number 5. In number 6, 8 goes into a positive 24, a positive 3 times. But negative 24 divided by 8 is going to be a negative 3, and that's because a negative divided by a positive is a negative. And I know this might get a little repetitive, but the more you say it as you do the problem, the better it will stick. So let's go on to number 7. Number 7, we have a negative divided by a positive, which results in a negative because they're different signs or opposite signs. So if we have 21 divided by 7, that's 3, but negative 21 divided by 7 is a negative 3. So negative 3 is our solution to number 7. In number 6, we have 6 divided by a negative 6, and we know that 6 divided by 6 is 1, but 6 divided by a negative 6 Positive divided by a negative results in a negative. So this is going to be negative 1. Negative 1 is our solution in number 8. In number 9, we have negative 132 divided by negative 11. A negative divided by a negative, we're halfway there. We know that our answer is positive. So now we just have to figure out how many times does 11 go into 132. And 11 goes into 132 12 times. So positive 12 is our answer in number 9. And again, if you need help with this division, sometimes it's easier to think of smaller numbers and work your way up to 132. So I know for a fact that multiplying by 10, you just put a 0 in that ones place and shift every other number to the left. So 11 times 10 is 110, and 110 is 22 less than 132. So I don't need 10 11s, and I don't need 11 11s. I need 12 11s to get to 132. So that's just another trick when dividing. But I would say a good rule of thumb is to at least know your multiplication and division tables up to 12, because it just makes mental math a little easier. Now on to number 10. Negative 60 divided by negative 15 is going to result in a positive. Because they have the same sign, we're going to have a positive quotient or a positive result. And 15 goes into 60 4 times. 60 divided by 15 is 4. And lots of times when working with 60 and 15, I sometimes think about a clock. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, that's a half hour, and then another half hour gets us to 60, so I know there's 4 15-minute intervals in a total of 60 minutes. But that's just one way that I find dealing with 60 and 15 makes it a little bit easier. So positive 4 is our solution in number 10. Moving on to number 11, we have negative 52 divided by negative 4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, so we know our solution is going to be positive. And 4 goes into 52 13 times. And the way I did that in my head is I know that 4 times 12 is 48, and then one more 4 gets me to 52, so that would be 4 times 13. And again, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so this is positive 13. And lastly, on this page, we're going to complete number 12. Number 12, we have 60 divided by 12. A positive divided by a positive, we know to be a positive. So 60 divided by 12 is a positive 5. 5 is our solution in number 12. Now let's move on to the second page. And as we move on to the second page, I'd like to remind you that if you're finding this video helpful, give me a thumbs up. Just click that like button, and while you're at that, subscribe to my channel so that you're updated when I come out with new videos. And if you want more ways to support me, become a patron. Click the Patreon link in my description below to find out more information. But make sure to ask your parents before you pledge. So now that you've hopefully hit that thumbs up button, let's continue on to number 13. In number 13, we have 6 divided by negative 1. Positive divided by negative is a negative. 6 divided by 1 is 6. So that's going to be a negative 6 for our solution. In number 14, we have 75 divided by 15. And again, if you want to reference back to dealing with time, we know that there's 4 15-minute intervals in 60 minutes, and then one more 15 would get us to 75. So 75 divided by 15 is a positive 5. Positive divided by positive is positive. 5 is our solution in number 14. In number 15, we have 65 divided by a negative 13. Positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. And then, how many times does 13 go into 65? 65 divided by 13 is going to be 5. So 65 divided by negative 13 is a negative 5. On to number 16. We have a positive divided by a positive, which we've been dealing with positive numbers for a few years now. And a positive divided by a positive is always positive. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. So positive 3 is our solution in number 16. In number 17, we have negative 168 divided by negative 12. A negative divided by a negative, we know, is a positive. So our solution is going to be positive. We just have to figure out how many times 12 goes into 168. I know that 12 times 12 is 144. And if I add 2 more 12s to that, I'll get to 168. Because 144 plus 12 is 156, and 156 plus 12 is 168. So I need 14 12s to get to 168. So 14, and that's a positive 14, is going to be my solution in number 17. In number 18, this looks very similar to a previous problem. Negative 8 divided by 2. I believe before we had 8 divided by negative 2. But remember, negative divided by a positive or positive divided by a negative, as long as those signs are opposite, as long as the signs are different, the quotient will be negative. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and that's going to be a negative 4. Negative 4 is our solution in number 18. Now moving on to number 19, they switch things up a bit, but we're still dividing. A fraction bar means to divide. So I could also write this as negative 105 divided by 7. I will say though, the further you go in math, the more common it is to use a fraction bar to represent division. So the numerator divided by the denominator. The numerator is that top number, and we're dividing it by the denominator, which is that bottom number. So let's go ahead and figure out, is it positive or negative? A negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative. So we know our solution is going to be negative. We just have to figure out how many times 7 goes into 105. Well, I know that 7 times 10, that's an easy one to do. That gets us to 70. And then 70 plus 35 gets us to 105. And 7 goes into 35 5 times. So I need 15 sevens. 105 divided by 7 is 15. So negative 105 divided by positive 7 is negative 15. That's my solution in number 19. Now number 20 is a little bit easier. We have a negative divided by a negative, which, same sign, we know results in a positive. And 4 divided by 1 is simply 4. So 4 is our solution in number 20. In number 21, we have another negative divided by a negative, and we know that results in a positive. Correct. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, and our answer is positive. So positive 5 is our solution in number 21. In number 22, we have negative 144 divided by a positive 12. Negative divided by a positive, those are opposite signs, so our result is going to be negative. And 12 goes into 144 12 times. Negative 144 divided by 12 is a negative 12. For number 23, we have a positive divided by a negative, so the result is going to be negative. And 24 divided by 12 is 2, so negative 2 is our solution in number 23. Now, on the last problem, number 24, we have 60 divided by a negative 15. Positive divided by a negative results in a negative. So we know that our solution is going to be negative. We just now have to do 60 divided by 15. And we know that 60 divided by 15 is 4, so our solution for 60 divided by negative 15 is a negative 4. And with that, we wrap up our Dividing Integers PreAlgebra KutaSoftware website worksheet. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, or you need to know how to access this worksheet, go ahead and click the link in the description. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.